The reaction from Republicans to Joe Biden's first speech before a joint session of Congress was pathetic, childish, and ignorant, which are three adjectives that I could be describing almost anything the Republican Party has done over the last few years as pathetic, childish, and ignorant, and it would be accurate. Republican Senator Tim Scott gave the formal rebuttal, and we'll get to a couple of clips of that. But Fox News gave the informal rebuttal, as I'm calling it, and we're going to look at clips of that as well. Immediately after the speech, in an interview with Fox's Sean Hannity, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy again brought up that Joe Biden wants to control how much red meat each American eats. This was never believable from the start. It's now been totally debunked. And a different Fox News program actually apologized for falsely reporting that Joe Biden wanted to control meat eating. McCarthy doesn't care. He repeats it again.
He just continues. He wants control of your life. He's going to control how much meat you can eat. Can you imagine that?
Then here is a Fox News host, Sean Hannity, complaining about how Joe Biden walked. He didn't like the gait, that's G-A-I-T, of Joe Biden walking into the speech.
You watch I call it the Biden shuffle. It's like, the little baby steps that he takes as he walks and the little elbows. Looks like it's an effort. There doesn't seem to be a vitality in how he approaches this.
Very substantive, as you can tell. And by the way, it's weird to complain about how Joe Biden walks when Donald Trump had to be helped down the ramp at West Point by a military general. But what do I know? It seems that people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. But apparently Sean Hannity having nothing left but that to do. Senator Ted Cruz, who again, earlier we saw dozing off during Joe Biden's speech, he summed the speech up this way.
Well, look, I think the speech tonight, you could sum up in 3 words: boring, but radical.
And then much of the reaction was not about the proposals, but about masks and distancing. Check this out.
By the way, this needs to be said. All of the people in that room, they've been fully vaccinated. Congress, they were first in line back in December. Do we not have an explanation? Why can't that room be full? Why is everyone still wearing masks?
Now, of course, we know the answers to these questions. They love, when your audience is uninformed and doesn't know any better, you can ask questions and pretend we don't have answers and get them on board by saying, why don't we have the answer to that? But we have the answers. The CDC guidelines are vaccinated people do not have to wear masks in small indoor gatherings. There is still enough of an unvaccinated population and 50,000 cases a day spreading that at a large event, people should wear masks regardless of vaccination status, in part because you don't know everybody's vaccination status. The House chamber with 200 people in it, even if it's not the full 535 members of Congress plus staff that would normally be there, it's not a small group. Vaccination was not mandatory. Rand Paul, I think, didn't get his. I don't remember now, but I think, you do not know the vaccination status of everyone in the room. It's not a small group. That's why it's not super complicated. That's why they're wearing masks. Plus, so many of Hannity's followers are so dumb that if they saw a room full of 535 people without masks, they would think it's okay for them and their unvaccinated friends to start doing whatever the hell they want. So the answer is actually quite simple as to why this is the way it was done. The defenders of Donald Trump also are suddenly very concerned about the nuances of CDC guidelines. Here is another from Fox News. They were never concerned about Trump's rallies or anything. Listen to the concern now.
Well, first I want to talk about what I'm seeing. And, Martha, you mentioned these people who are all vaccinated being indoors, socially distancing with their masks on. That's against CDC guidance. And it's not just that that's theater. It actually shows that the United States is at a weak point when the Congress can't show up in full to show that the United States is standing strong after coming out of a pandemic that was caused by China. I mean, if you give a joint address to a Congress that is not even half full, does it really even count as a joint address to Congress? I mean, I think that's really a question. The other thing that I heard.
Yes, we look weak because there weren't more people at Joe Biden's speech. Give me a break, guys. Here's one more about this. basically the only thing that Fox News had to talk about was masking and distancing.
I think it's worth noting at the top just the feel of this room and the fact that he talked a lot in the beginning about COVID, about pulling through COVID and getting through this era that really marked so much of his candidacy. And yet you have this new CDC guidance that came out just this week, which said, and I'll read it to you, fully vaccinated people can visit other fully vaccinated people indoors without wearing masks or social distancing. So you just have to ask yourself if this is setting an example looking forward for the country of what everyone can expect the country to be like in this period where people now have very open availability to vaccines.
Really asking the tough questions, huh? In his formal response to Joe Biden, Republican Senator Tim Scott referred to what he says was the most inclusive economy of his lifetime under Donald Trump before COVID.
Thanks to our bipartisan work last year, job openings are rebounding. So why do we feel so divided? Anxious. A nation with so much cause for hope should not feel so heavy laden. A president who promised to bring us together should not be pushing agendas that tear us apart. The American family deserves better, and we know what better looks like. Just before COVID, we had the most inclusive economy in my lifetime.
You know, I really don't recall that magical period of bipartisanship and unity under Trump that Tim Scott is referring to. Trump, in fact, statistically, has been the most divisive president in the modern polling era. But he wants us to believe it was ginger snaps and candy waterfalls and rainbows and all of this stuff. And overall, I mean, Tim Scott's response was just very weak. It felt like it had no testicular fortitude behind it. Here's one more clip.
Our public schools should have reopened months ago. Other countries did. Private and religious schools did. Science has shown for months that schools are safe. But too often, powerful grown-ups set science aside, and kids like me were left behind.
Of course, more and more schools are open and things are opening. And it's like, this is your criticism. Much of it doesn't even have to do with Joe Biden. A lot of these school decisions are state decisions, individual school decisions. I know school principals. I know people on boards of education. And it's not Joe Biden that's deciding anyway. So a completely vapid, flaccid, substance-free reaction to Joe Biden's speech, both in terms of the official response by Republican Senator Tim Scott and by Fox News, and the fact that they have nothing substantive, once again, is a sign that Joe Biden is generally speaking on the right track, because the critiques aren't substantive, because Joe Biden is proposing things that are widely speaking popular, necessary, and well received by the American people. Let me know what you thought of the speech. You can find me on Twitter at @Pakman. If you ever feel like you just don't have enough time to read all the books you want to read, you have to check out one of my favorite apps called Blinkist. Blinkist takes thousands of popular nonfiction books and distills each one down into an ebook or audiobook that you can get through in just 15 minutes, where you're getting all the key takeaways from the book. Just imagine how you'll be able to expand your horizons and knowledge by being able to soak up all of the important insights from 10 different books in an afternoon. Obviously, it's perfect for exposing yourself to a new book you otherwise wouldn't have time for, or you can use it to revisit a book you've already read, or use it to preview a book before you buy the full version and read it. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way. And it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.